My heart will stay with my friends. It'll never die.
Really? Well, we'll just see about that.
Ah!
Sora ain't gonna go anywhere.
You'd betray your king?
Not on your life. But I'm not gonna betray Sora either, 'cause he's become one of my best buddies after all we've been through together. See you later, Donald. Could you tell the king I'm really sorry?
Hold on, Goofy! We'll try them together! Well, you know, after one and once for all.
I guess you're stuck with us, Sora.
Thanks a lot, Donald, Goofy.
Is it the characters, the story, the music? As I sit here writing through what seems to be endless hours, I start to realize more and more how hard it is to try and convey my exact feelings on how the first Kingdom Hearts game makes me feel. What is it about this game that even decades later makes me feel that if I wasn't lucky enough to come across it when I did back when I was a child, where would I be today? As melodramatic as it sounds, it's true. Had I not seen that commercial for the game on TV featuring iconic characters such as Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and Goofy, and a whole bunch of other familiar Disney characters I grew up with, I probably would have brushed it off like any other commercial on TV. Kingdom Hearts wasn't just a start for me in terms of the series itself, but it also happened to introduce me to another iconic piece of media, Final Fantasy. Seeing the interaction between all the different Disney characters and the Final Fantasy characters is something I found to be truly interesting, even if I didn't know what Final Fantasy was at the time. It was just really cool that the characters from the movies I grew up watching were having conversations with all these other characters from a completely different game series. It was awesome, and from that point I took it upon myself to venture out and try the very same games these Final Fantasy characters were from years later. It's insane how a small conversation in an elevator led to the creation of a game that has touched so many people's lives, and ironically enough, that same theme of touching and changing so many lives ends up being one of the central themes of the series. At the very beginning of Kingdom Hearts 1, you are greeted with a seemingly simple narrative. We have our three main characters, Sora, Riku, and Hikari, all of which have been friends and grew up together. Their main goal is to build a raft so they may venture out from their island to explore other worlds, their curiosity being the main thing that drives them. You know, kid stuff. Sora, our main protagonist, is what you would expect a kid of his age to be like. Carefree, happy-go-lucky type of guy who wants to travel around with his friends and go wherever the wind takes him. When looking at Riku, he's the best friend and or rival to Sora. Smug attitude and all, Riku is very similar to Sora in the regard that he wants to travel with his friends to other worlds and to seek out things they otherwise would not be able to do so while being stuck on an island. Though, while Sora and Hikari have a more positive and carefree outlook on their situation, Riku is a tad more serious when it comes to the topic, completely serious about wanting to leave the island and that he might do anything necessary to achieve that. Last but not least, we have Hikari, the last friend of the trio. In Kairi's case, while she does have her own role in the greater scheme of the game, it's not as prominent as Sora or Riku's, at least not in the beginning. At first glance, Hikari is set up to be just a love interest for Sora. Even at the beginning of the game, we get a few scenes that lead us to believe just that. Of course, if you've played Kingdom Hearts before, you know each character is a whole lot more complex than what I stated previously, which I'll get into later. Looking at the beginning of the game, I believe it was set up very well. Showing off the three friends living their daily lives on the island and what they do in their spare time is a great way to connect the player with the characters. Whether it's looking for raft materials, fighting with the various Final Fantasy characters on the island, or even sparring with Riku, you start to get a sense of not only who these characters are, but what they enjoy doing and can relate to it in turn. I'm sure we all have memories of doing similar things when we were all kids as well. Going out to quote-unquote grand adventures, trying to make things out of nothing, just doing the stupidest things, but it was fun because we were with our friends, and that's all that really mattered. Being able to relate to these things like this in these games we play, I would say, is a pretty unique characteristic that not many games have. That's why when it comes to Kingdom Hearts, you can recommend it to both kids and adults, and everyone can probably find something they really enjoy in the game. Not all is sunshine and rainbows though, because later, as most of us know, the island becomes enveloped in darkness. Both Hikari and Riku go missing, and Sora is transported to a completely different world, Traverse Town. There we meet other various Final Fantasy characters and they give explanations to questions I'm sure we all had at this point. What the enemies we fight are the Heartless, the weapon that only we can use, the Keyblade, and pretty much what the plan should be here from here on out for Sora, seeing as he's the only one with the weapon that can be used to defeat the Heartless, and for the fact that he wants to try and find his missing friends so that they may return home. Later, he meets Donald and Goofy, and as luck would have it, they needed to find Sora as per request from King Mickey. Seeing as it was the best course of action, Sora teams up with Donald and Goofy as it may be his best chance of finding his friends, while Goofy and Donald need Sora so they can find the king. It's a pretty interesting dynamic because we aren't exactly friends with Donald and Goofy by this point, we're just tagging along with them because of convenience sake, and vice versa. And the game makes this very apparent. This gives us the chance to actually become friends with these characters instead of just starting out having known each other and giving the facade that this group is really close when they aren't at all. From this point on, we travel around with Donald and Goofy to various iconic Disney worlds in an attempt to find our missing friends. One thing that really sticks out to me when I look back at the first game is how well the story is woven into the Disney worlds. Each world is a key part in both telling the actual story of the game as well as showing the depth of all of its main characters and the growth they go through. Each world has a specific purpose in being there rather than just being there to say, oh look, it's that one Disney movie you grew up with, isn't it cool that Sora and company are here? For example, when Sora, Donald, and Goofy go to Deep Jungle, everything they go through in that world shows them the importance of friendship and how you shouldn't let little arguments get in the way of that, and all the while, they make it very clear that the trio's goal is still to make sure they find their missing friends as soon as they can. The game doesn't let you forget that fact. No matter what the world is, whether it's Olympus Coliseum, Wonderland, or even Monstro, other than to look for Riku, Hikari, and Mickey, the main thing we obtain from these visits would be the lessons that our main characters learn as they travel. It's character development. There's actual conflict in these worlds and each one of them make for excellent storytelling. Not only that, when it comes to the gameplay and the level design of the worlds, it adds to the overall experience even more. These elaborate pathways and secrets you find as you travel through the worlds for the first time is truly impressive, since most of the time the game rewards you for going out of your way to find things while you experience the story, or better yet, make it to where you aren't able to get certain items until you get better abilities later on and make you come back for them. Whenever I get the opportunity, I love to praise the first Kingdom Hearts game for this because when it comes to later entries in the series, while this is not completely absent from them, there is less of a focus on the mix between original story being in these Disney worlds and more of each of the worlds having their own stories that Sora and company just happen to go through. Again, I'm not saying it's not there at all, but I do believe the first Kingdom Hearts game does it the best, and it not only shows with the character development and the lessons we learn with our main characters from visiting these worlds, but with the villains that inhabit each of the worlds as well. When it comes to Kingdom Hearts 1, all of the villains from each of the Disney worlds actually work together with each other in an attempt to stop Sora from sealing the world's keyholes. I remember when I first played this game and I saw all of the villains around the round table and plotting to try and stop Sora and the gang. Just knowing that all these iconic villains are working together gave me a great feeling of worry because no matter where I went, I always felt like something was going to happen. There was a reason to be concerned at all times, and the feeling of wanting to find where our friends grew even larger. Now, backtracking a little bit, I said earlier that I would cover another character in more detail. This character is much like Sora, but due to his different circumstances, he's taken a different approach in trying to make things right again. Our good friend Riku. As we go through the game, we eventually meet up with Riku time and time again, and each time we see Riku, he's acting more standoffish, and for very good reason. Thanks to one of the central villains, Maleficent, she tricks Riku into thinking that Sora has forgotten all about the reason why they wanted to go to different worlds in the first place, and that he's found new friends that he cares about, that he doesn't care about Riku or Hikari anymore. This is the main reason why Riku's behavior suddenly starts to shift. As a kid playing through Kingdom Hearts 1, I was extremely annoyed at Riku because I didn't quite fully understand why he was seemingly in our way and doing all these annoying things when we should have been working together since our goal was more or less the same. Being the adult that I am now though, I believe the way Riku was handled is genius writing. The way Riku acts towards Sora is completely understandable once you have the context. Riku's been brainwashed to think his best friend doesn't care for him anymore, so now his only option is to find his other best friend, but unfortunately once he does, he knows she doesn't have her heart anymore and is dedicated to trying to find it so that she'll wake up. All the while, he's still being manipulated by Maleficent. You also have to realize that Riku was extremely jealous of Sora at the time, whether it was just through Sora's way of living, how carefree he is, or his close relationship with Hikari. Growing up, I'm sure we all had that best friend that we were jealous of. Of course, it was to a much lesser extent than what Riku and Sora's relationship was, but it was relatable nonetheless, at least for me. Coming to the later events of the game, the story and all of the characters really start to come into its own element, starting with when Sora confronts Riku in Hollow Bastion and Riku takes away his Keyblade. It's also the very same scene where, because Riku has taken control of the Keyblade, Donald and Goofy actually end up leaving Sora to travel with Riku since, if you remember, their mission is to find the Keyblade and King Mickey. Now that Sora doesn't have the Keyblade anymore, they have no reason to be with him. It really puts everything into perspective when it comes to their relationship. The friendship we spent all game building was never a facade, but at the same time, when it came down to it, they had their mission and we had ours, and I'll be completely honest, it truly did hurt me to see them leave, so I can only imagine how Sora felt having lost everything. Though lucky for us, the pain didn't stick around for too long as we got one of my favorite cutscenes in the entire game. Sora ends up being attacked by Riku once they meet up again, but Goofy protects Sora, recounting their friendship and everything they've been through together. Of course, Donald follows suit, he gets his Keyblade back, and we continue on as if everything that just happened to Sora never happened at all. If there was any other quality that I love about Sora that I hadn't already listed, it's how far he's willing to go to save his friends. He hadn't given up on Riku at this point, he wanted to save him no matter the cost. Even when he finally comes across Kairi and the possessed Riku tries to attack him, he doesn't just give up, he doesn't just let himself be attacked, he stands up and he fights, all in an attempt to get his best friends back to normal. When the time came where Sora realized the only way to save Kairi was to release both of their hearts and to become a Heartless, he gave his life without a second thought and brought her back. Imagine trying to tell me Sora isn't the best character in the series at this point. This also showed us, the players, how serious the feelings Sora has for Kairi are, and when she does the same for him later on, as well as the scene where she gives him her good luck charm she made at the beginning of the game, you start to see the direction Mora wanted to take the both of them. More specifically, Kairi. Usually, I don't really care for the damsel in distress trope, but as far as this game goes, I think it's done very well, as once she's saved, she's then turned into a central point of support for Sora for the rest of the game, and then if he ever decides to do something with Kairi later on in the series, he has the option to do so, he being Nomura. Now here we are. Sora, Donald, and Goofy finally meet face to face with Ansem. After several grueling battles, they defeat Ansem and arrive at the door to darkness. As chance would have it, Riku is on the other side of the door alongside the other character we had gone the entire game without seeing once, King Mickey. As Riku attempts to help us close the door, Mickey tells Sora they have to close the door for good, and imparts a very heartfelt thank you to Donald and Goofy for being able to do what he had asked. Just like me, Sora was apprehensive about closing the door since it would trap Mickey and Riku behind the door, but Mickey tells Sora that there is always a door to the light, letting us know that they will be able to find a way home. Right before they manage to close the door, we see Riku tell Sora to take care of Kairi. Sora nods his head and they successfully close the door. Soon after, Sora sees Kairi and runs to her. As they are both being separated as a result of the worlds being restored, Sora promises that he will come back to her one day, in which Kairi replies, "I know you will." And that, my friends, marks the end of Kingdom Hearts 1. I'm not sure about all of you guys, but the tears were already coming by the time I had to say goodbye to Riku and Mickey. I didn't want to leave them behind, but of course we didn't really have a choice. My feelings about the situation were amplified when the same thing happened to Kairi. We had spent the whole game looking for our friends, and it just wasn't fair that we had to be separated once again after reuniting after so long. The only thing that was able to save me from being in a deep depression for twice as long as I would have been after beating the game was the very last scene where we see our main trio walking, trying to figure out what we need to do next in order to find Mickey and Riku. With the letter from the king in Pluto's mouth, we chase after him with what I believe to be a lead to finding our missing friends. This game has the textbook definition of a bittersweet ending. Kingdom Hearts is one of those rare games where the game had me completely immersed in its world, its music, its characters, its story, and even its gameplay right from the very start. While the game is extremely nostalgic to me, I also believe it genuinely is the best start to a series I have ever had the pleasure of playing. From start to finish, traveling around to various iconic Disney worlds with my pals Donald and Goofy was some of the best fun I've ever had in my life. All the while, I also wanted the very best for these characters I've come to know, connect with, and deeply love. Kingdom Hearts, while many people may have a whole lot of issues with the series as a whole, and while a lot of those criticisms to be had are valid, it's still my favorite video game franchise of all time. It has extremely high ups and extremely low downs, but that doesn't stop it from being my favorite, nor does it stop the immense love I have for it. For changing my life the way this game did in every aspect, I'm extremely grateful for this game and the games that follow after it. I want to thank you all so very much for watching this video. please down in the comments let me know what your experience with this game has been like. Has the game touched you in the same way it did for me? I think the best part of doing YouTube is being able to interact with you all down below, so do let me know how you guys felt. If you guys did enjoy the video, and I cannot stress this enough, please do leave a like on the video as it tells YouTube that I'm not dead, and it grows the channel by recommending my videos to more and more people. This will be the last video until about early April, where I plan to upload a complete Drakengard lore / timeline video similar to the one I made for Kingdom Hearts. It's to help prepare those who are wanting to play the Nier Replicant remasters for the first time. If you wish to know all the references and lore before playing that game, I hope you all can support that video when it drops. It's been in production for the last 3 months or so prepare yourselves for a very wild ride. Again, thank you all so much for sticking to the end of the video and watching it. I'll see you guys again early next month.